Single Dad helped a woman with her luggage. She returned with an offer that changed everything. It was just after 5 in the afternoon when the announcement crackled through the train stations. Old speakers barely audible over the crowd and the hum of people rushing home. Daniel Cross, a tall man in his early 30s with sleeves rolled up and shadows under his eyes, stood near the ticket machine with a backpack slung over one shoulder and his daughter's tiny hand in the other. 7-year-old Emma clutched a juice box and looked around with wide eyes. "Daddy, this place smells like pretzels and old socks." Daniel chuckled. "That's a pretty accurate description." They were waiting for the local train home after visiting Daniel's sister across town. The trip had been good-needed, but long. Emma was tired, her pigtails slightly lopsided, and Daniel's worn boots ached from the day. As the crowd shifted, Daniel noticed a woman at the far end of the platform, struggling with 3 oversized suitcases and a large tote. She looked polished but flustered, her beige trench coat too clean for this kind of place, her heels clicking uncomfortably on the tile floor. A passing commuter bumped her shoulder. One of her suitcases toppled. Emma saw it too. "Daddy, she needs help." Daniel didn't hesitate. "Stay right here, Em." He stepped through the tide of commuters and reached the woman just as she tried to right the suitcase. "Need a hand?" he asked. The woman looked up, startled. Her dark hair was pinned neatly, her expression guarded. "Oh, yes, please." Daniel lifted one suitcase with ease and steadied the second. "You going far?" "Just across the street to the hotel," she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "But I didn't realize how uneven the sidewalk was, or how heavy I packed." He smiled gently. "Happens to the best of us." "Come on, I'll walk you over." Emma, watching from a distance, gave an enthusiastic wave. The woman glanced over. "Your daughter," Daniel nodded. "That's Emma. She's the boss." The woman allowed herself a small smile. "She's adorable." They made their way to the exit. The woman's grip on the tote eased slightly as she walked beside him. "Thank you, really. I'm Claire." "Daniel." When they reached the hotel steps, Claire hesitated. "You didn't have to stop. Most people wouldn't." Daniel shrugged. "Most people are busy. I'm just tired." She smiled again, this time a little softer. "Still, thank you." He gave a polite nod. "Take care." He turned back toward the station, Emma running up to grab his hand again. Claire stood at the door a moment longer, watching the man and his daughter disappear into the crowd. She didn't know it then, but that moment would stay with her. And Danielle had no idea the woman with the luggage was someone whose return would change everything. The evening routine at the Cross apartment was simple. Emma brushed her teeth with a song timer Daniel downloaded on his phone. He heated up a frozen dinner mac and cheese for her leftover stir-fry for him, and they curled up on the couch under a frayed blanket, the TV on low. After a day of being a mechanic, a commuter, and a dad, Daniel always tried to carve out 30 quiet minutes before bedtime. Emma fell asleep halfway through a cartoon, her head on his shoulder, and pancaked the stuffed bunnies squished between them. Daniel carried her to bed, tucked her in, and tiptoed back to the living room. He turned the TV to the local news, mostly just for background noise while he cleaned up. That's when he saw her. Claire Hartwell, CEO of Hartwell Strategies, was spotted earlier today checking into a downtown hotel, her first appearance in the city in over a year. Speculation continues to swirl around her absence from the business world. Daniel froze, sponge in hand, eyes locked on the screen. It was her, the woman from the station, the one with the heavy luggage and tired eyes. He remembered her polite thank you, the soft smile when he said Emma was the boss. And now, there she was on TV, hair and makeup perfect, her image split-screened with headlines about corporate mergers and billion-dollar investments. Claire Hartwell. He let the name sink in. It sounded familiar now. One of those names you hear in passing, mentioned in finance articles and TED Talks, in headlines about philanthropic foundations and rising CEOs under 40. He leaned back against the kitchen counter. She hadn't told him who she was, hadn't acted entitled or distant. She'd just looked overwhelmed, and she'd accepted his help without pretending she didn't need it. Daniel turned the volume down and stood there for a long time, Something about the whole thing sat strange in his chest. Not bad, just unfinished. He looked down the hall toward Emma's room where soft breathing came in rhythm. Then he turned back to the dishes. He didn't think he'd see Claire Hartwell again. But life has a way of circling back, especially when it owes you something. The next morning began like most others, before the sun and before the alarm. Daniel was already dressed by 5:15 a.m., pulling on his faded mechanic's coveralls and lacing up boots that had more miles than tread. The apartment was still and dim, the only light coming from under Emma's door. She liked to sleep with her nightlamp shaped like a cloud. He smiled at the soft glow as he packed her lunch. Peanut butter sandwich, apple slices, half a chocolate bar tucked in like a secret reward. By 6:00 a.m., he was nudging her gently. "Come on, bug, rise and shine." She groaned and pulled the blanket over her head. "No school today. It's Wednesday." "That's not a real day." He chuckled and lifted her like a bundle of blankets. "It is if we want pancakes this weekend." Emma opened one eye. "With syrup." "With syrup." That got her moving. By 6:45, they were on the bus. Daniel dropped her at school with a kiss on the forehead and a reminder not to lose her lunchbox again. Then he boarded the second bus across town to the shop. The garage wasn't much, just 2 bays, a leaky roof, and a coffee pot that hissed like it held a grudge. But it was work. Honest, greasy, underpaid work. Morning Cross, his boss, Ed, grunted from under a pickup truck. Oil change and tire rotation on that Civic. And the Land Rover's back with the same rattle. "Do your magic." Daniel nodded, already tying his apron. The hours slipped past in heat and noise. By lunch, his arms were streaked with grease and his back throbbed from crouching too long. He checked his phone between messages from Emma's teacher, reminding parents about Friday's science project. He didn't know how he'd afford materials yet. He didn't complain. That wasn't his way. But as he scrubbed his hands with orange-scented soap that never fully worked, he thought about the woman at the station. Claire, he hadn't told anyone. What would he even say? "Hey, I helped a billionaire CEO with her suitcase." He wasn't looking for a reward. That moment had been ordinary, even forgettable, except that it wasn't. Not to him. He clocked out at 5:15 p.m. just in time to take 2 buses back, pick up Emma from aftercare, and get home before dark. She told him about a kid who sneezed glitter during art class. That night, after she was asleep, Daniel sat at the kitchen table and looked at the bills spread in front of him. Rent due in 5 days, Emma's school project, a leaking faucet he hadn't had time to fix. He let out a long breath. And for the first time, he allowed himself to wonder, not hope, but wonder what it might feel like for life to ease up. Just a little. 3 days passed. Daniel had almost convinced himself it was just a momentous, strange, quick brush with someone from a different universe. Claire Hartwell was probably back on a jet somewhere, solving the world's problems, while he was still wondering how to keep his fridge from making that rattling noise. It was Saturday morning. Emma was still in pajamas, sitting cross-legged on the couch with a coloring book spread across the coffee table. Daniel stood in the kitchen, whisking pancake batter with a cracked wooden spoon. A knock came at the door. 3 soft raps. Not urgent, just unexpected. He wiped his hands on a dish towel. "Stay here, Em." She didn't look up. "Tell them we don't want any more vacuum flyers." But it wasn't a flyer. When Daniel opened the door, he froze. Claire Hartwell stood there again. This time she wore jeans, a soft sweater, and her hair down in loose waves. No suitcase, no trench coat, no camera crew, just her and a hesitant smile. "Hi," she said. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Daniel blinked. "You found me." She held up her phone. "You mentioned the garage. It didn't take long to figure out which one. And I guessed your name after hearing your daughter call you Daddy Cross at the station." He stepped back, still processing. "Do you want to come in?" "Only if it's okay." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, of course." Claire stepped inside. Emma looked up from her coloring and tilted her head. "You're the suitcase lady." Claire grinned. "That's me." Emma stood and walked over. Want pancakes? Claire glanced at Daniel, amused. I'd love one. He poured an extra dollop of batter into the pan while Claire knelt beside Emma and asked what she was coloring. Daniel watched them from the stove, heart ticking a little faster than usual. It felt strange, comfortable even, but also impossible. After breakfast, when Emma ran off to dress Pancake the rabbit in a new sock outfit, Daniel and Claire stood near the window, coffee mugs in hand. I never got to thank you properly, she said. He shrugged. You already did. She shook her head. No, you helped me without knowing who I was. That means more than you think. Daniel looked at her. Why come back? Claire hesitated. Because most people look right through you when they think they know your name. But you looked at me like I was just someone who needed help. And I needed that more than I realized. He didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. I have a proposition, Claire said, setting her mug down. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Proposition. Meet me Monday morning at the address. I'll text you. It's a business opportunity. And before you say anything, just come. No pressure, no promises. He studied her. You tracked me down to offer me a job. She smiled. Not a job. Something better. Then she scribbled something on a napkin, handed it to him, and walked to the door. Thanks for the pancakes, she said. Your daughter's a masterpiece. And just like before, Claire Hartwell was gone. But this time she had left more than a name. She had left a door cracked open. By Monday morning, Daniel had convinced himself 100 reasons not to go. He didn't own a suit. He didn't belong in boardrooms. He wasn't someone who got offers. He was a mechanic, a father, a man surviving month to month. Still, by 8 a.m., he was tightening lug nuts with one eye on the clock and Claire's napkin folded in his back pocket like a secret. He lasted another hour before Ed finally noticed his restlessness. You got ants in your boots today, Ed grumbled, glancing up from a brake pad replacement. Daniel wiped his hands on a rag. Something like that. Ed squinted at him. You got somewhere to be? Daniel hesitated. Maybe. Ed looked him over, then waved a hand. Go. But if you don't come back, at least tell me if it's because you hit the lottery or joined a cult. Daniel chuckled, already unzipping his coveralls. If I join a cult, you're coming with me. By 10 a.m., he was standing in front of a sleek, glass-fronted building in the city's design district, too modern for someone who smelled faintly of motor oil and public transit. He stared up at the logo etched above the doors, Hartwell and Company, so it wasn't a prank. She meant it. He stepped inside. The lobby was quiet, minimalist, bathed in natural light. A receptionist with clipped vowels and perfect posture greeted him. Mr. Cross. He nodded, surprised. Miss Hartwell is expecting you. 11th floor. The elevator hummed as it climbed, his reflection twitching in the chrome walls. He felt out of place. Boots, scuffed, calloused hands tucked into his pockets, but he didn't turn back. When the doors opened, Claire was waiting. She wasn't in a power suit. She wore a navy blouse and black slacks, her hair pulled back loosely as if to meet him halfway. She smiled when she saw him. You came. You were hard to ignore. She gestured to a conference room lined with floor-to-ceiling windows and a single laptop open on the table. Let me explain why I asked you here. Daniel sat cautious. Claire paced slowly as she spoke. I'm building a new project, smaller, more personal, something away from the noise of corporate nonsense. A startup under Hartwell's umbrella focused on practical innovation. Mechanics, engineers, small business, real-world solutions. I need someone grounded, someone who knows what working people face, someone with integrity. She looked at him squarely. I need someone like you, Daniel. He stared at her. You want me to consult? She smiled. I want you to help design it from the ground up. Leadership, culture, community, everything. And yes, you'd be paid. Well, Daniel's first instinct was to laugh. Not out of mockery, but disbelief. You don't know me. I know enough, she said. You helped a stranger in a train station without expecting anything in return. That tells me more than any R-sum. He leaned back, searching her expression for a catch, a loophole, a punchline. There was none. Claire Hartwell was serious, dead serious. You'd have flexibility, she added. Time for Emma, freedom to grow. He thought of Emma's half-finished science project, the overdue utility bill, the long hours in the garage that left little left of him for anything else. Then he looked at Claire, and he saw not a CEO, not a billionaire, but a woman who had come back, not because she needed something, but because she remembered being helped when she needed it most. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. I need time to think, of course, she said, but just know this isn't a favor. It's a door. He stood slowly. And if I walk through it, then everything changes. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He lay on the couch long after Emma had gone to bed, staring at the ceiling, the hum of the fridge filling the silence like static. On the table beside him, Claire's business card glinted under the lamplight, heavy embossed, important. He'd been offered opportunities before, mostly empty ones. A better shift here, an extra hour of overtime there. But this was something else. And that made it harder to believe. By morning, he'd nearly convinced himself it had been a mistake, a misunderstanding. He'd show up and realize it wasn't meant for him. That maybe Claire had been polite, nostalgic, and generous, but not serious. Still, part of him had hoped, until everything unraveled. It started with a phone call. He was at the shop again, back in coveralls, grease already under his nails. The call came just after 10 a.m. Emma's school. This is Ms. Brighton. Emma had a mild asthma episode during recess. Daniel froze, wrench in hand. Is she okay? She's stable now, but she needs to be picked up. And I think she may have outgrown her inhaler prescription. It's nearly empty. Daniel apologized to Ed, grabbed his jacket, and ran out. The school nurse gave him a form to sign in a plastic bag with the inhaler, its contents nearly gone. Emma sat quietly in the corner, her arms wrapped around her knees, trying to be brave. Hey, Bug, he said gently, kneeling beside her, scared me there. I'm okay, she whispered. Just couldn't breathe for a little bit. He nodded and kissed her forehead. Let's go home. On the bus, she leaned against him and dozed off, and all Daniel could think about was how close they'd come to disaster. The inhaler had been nearly empty for a week, he'd known, but rent was due and the co-pay for a refill was more than what was left in his checking account after groceries. He'd meant to figure it out, he always meant to. By the time they got home, Daniel wasn't thinking about Claire's offer anymore. He was thinking about the envelope on the counter with final notice in red print, about how he couldn't afford the risk of walking away from guaranteed hours even if they were few and underpaid. That night he emailed Claire. Claire, I can't thank you enough for what you offered, but I don't think I can step away from what's steady right now, even if it's hard. My daughter needs stability and I don't have room to gamble. I hope you understand. Daniel, he hit send before he could change his mind. The decision didn't feel right, but it felt necessary. Sometimes life didn't give you room for dreams, not when you were a single dad with bills, an asthmatic child, and calluses that told the truth of your days. Daniel tucked Emma in with her stuffed rabbit and turned off the lights. He told himself he'd done the right thing, even if it didn't feel that way. The reply came the next morning. Daniel didn't expect it. He'd already braced himself for silence, a dignified, distant kind of goodbye. People like Claire Hartwell didn't chase after men who fixed brakes and packed school lunches with crumpled dollar bills. But at 6:43 a.m., as he poured cereal into Emma's favorite bowl, his phone buzzed. Claire Hartwell, 6:43 a.m. You didn't say no, you said not yet. Meet me halfway. I have an idea. Daniel read the message twice. Then again. He wasn't sure what meet me halfway meant, but it was clear she hadn't closed the door, and that stirred something in his chest that felt dangerously close to hope. He sent a cautious reply. What kind of idea? Her response came within minutes. Claire Hartwell, a.m. Something flexible, something part-time at first. You keep your job. I pay you as a consultant. We start small. You give me 5 hours a week. I give you 5 times your current hourly rate. Non-negotiable. Daniel stared at the screen, a spoon suspended in the air. Daddy Emma tugged at his sleeve. "You're spilling the milk," he snapped back, laughing softly. "Oops. Sorry, bug." That day at the garage, his hands still turned wrenches. He still wiped sweat from his brow and checked brake fluid and filled out invoices. But something had shifted. By noon, he'd replied, "Okay, let's try it. But if it messes with bedtime or school drop-offs, I'm out." Claire Hartwell, 12:03 p.m. Bedtime is sacred. I'd never mess with that. He smiled. And just like that, the impossible offer became real. 2 days later, they met at a modest co-working space downtown. Nothing fancy, just open desks, whiteboards, and the smell of fresh coffee. Claire slid a folder across the table. "This is the project," she said. "We're building a support network for blue-collar workers, real tools, resources, education. A place where people like you don't get left behind." Daniel flipped through pages filled with outlines, diagrams, and notes, scribbled in Claire's surprisingly messy handwriting. "You're really doing this," he said quietly. "I am," she nodded, "and I want your voice in the room, because if I don't understand your world, I can't build anything worth keeping." He looked at her, not the CEO, not the headline, just a woman trying to change something starting with him. He extended his hand. "Then I guess we've got work to do." She took it, firm, steady, and for the first time in a long time, Daniel felt something shift under his feet, not like the ground falling away, but like a foundation being laid. Not charity, not luck, a new beginning. What started as a 5-hour-a-week consulting gig quickly became something else. Not more work, Claire kept her word, but more connection. Each meeting with her wasn't just about budgets or strategy or flowcharts. It was about stories. His, hers, the kind you couldn't put in a spreadsheet. Daniel told her about the night he almost missed Emma's birth because his second job wouldn't let him clock out. Claire told him about growing up behind glass walls where expectations wore designer heels and kindness was a boardroom strategy. One night after their usual Thursday check-in, Claire paused before leaving. "I'm not good at this," she said. "At what?" She glanced down, then back at him, letting people see the real version of me. Daniel leaned against the table. "You showed up in jeans and offered me a job based on a suitcase and a hunch. I think that's pretty real." She smiled at that, one of the rare unguarded ones. "Most people think I built my company by being the smartest person in the room," she said. "Didn't you?" She shook her head. "I built it by being the one who listened when no one else did." I forgot that for a while. Daniel said nothing for a beat, then replied quietly, "We all forget who we are sometimes." Claire glanced at him again, this time longer. "You didn't forget. You just got tired." That landed harder than she probably intended. Because it was true. He didn't feel broken, just worn, like the soles of his boots, like the hands that had done too much with too little. But lately with her, he didn't feel that way as much. And that scared him because it wasn't just business anymore. It was the way Claire always asked about Emma before every meeting. The way she made room for his silences. The way she looked at him like maybe he wasn't someone to pity, but someone to stand beside. One Saturday, Claire showed up at his door holding a cardboard box. "Science fair," she said. Daniel blinked. "What, I brought supplies?" Emma said she wanted to build a solar system, and I happened to know my way around glitter and glue. Emma came running, shrieking with excitement. And for the next 2 hours, Daniel stood in the kitchen while Claire and Emma built a lopsided galaxy that sparkled brighter than it should have. When it was done and Emma proudly held up the cardboard universe, Claire looked over her shoulder and said softly, "You're doing a good job, you know." Daniel's throat tightened. "Thanks." She didn't say it like someone checking a box. She said it like someone who had seen. And in that moment, he realized something terrifying and beautiful. This wasn't just about a job anymore. It was about the woman who came back and the life that might be waiting if he let her stay. The garage was thriving. Daniel upgraded his tools, finally replacing the duct-taped ratchet set he'd used for years. Emma started calling the garage Dad's Castle, and customers showed up with more trust and more complicated jobs. Claire surprised them one morning by rolling in with a sleek hybrid SUV. Company car, she smiled. I figured it deserves someone who can actually fix it. Emma ran up giddy. It has a sunroof. Daniel gave Claire a long look. This is too much. Claire shrugged. You've earned it. This business is yours, Dan. I just helped it find its legs. For the first time in a long while, Daniel believed he wasn't just surviving, he was building something real. But things rarely stay easy. An unexpected letter came in the mail. Emma's school was raising tuition. Daniel had moved her to a better public charter school a month earlier, but it turned out to have supplemental fees he hadn't prepared for. He stared at the notice that night, worried. Claire noticed his mood the next time they met. Want to talk about it? He hesitated. It's not your problem. I didn't ask if it was. I asked if you wanted to talk. He sighed. Emma's school, it's more expensive than I thought, and I'm already working 6 days. Claire leaned forward. You're allowed to accept help, Daniel, especially when it's for someone who deserves the world. The next morning, Daniel found a sealed envelope in the garage's mailbox. No return address. Inside was a receipt. Emma's tuition was paid in full for the next year. He stared at the paper. No note, no signature. But he knew. That night, he walked Claire to her car again. Thank you, she smiled faintly. For what? He didn't answer. Claire invited Daniel and Emma to a gala fundraiser. She promised it wasn't formal, just a small garden event. Emma wore a sparkly blue dress they found at a thrift store, and Claire brought her a matching headband. Daniel felt awkward in his only suit jacket, but Emma squeezed his hand as they entered. Inside, Daniel was stunned. People greeted Claire like royalty. She's kind of a big deal, whispered one guest. Runs the biggest social impact fund in the state. Daniel stood straighter. Claire found him later. I hope it wasn't too much. I didn't know who you really were. Does it change anything? He looked at her. No, you're still the woman who couldn't carry her own suitcase. She laughed. After the gala, Claire came by the garage and stayed for dinner. Emma had made cookies burnt on the bottom, but sweet, and laughter filled the room. As Emma slept, Claire helped Daniel wash dishes. I wasn't always like this, she said suddenly. I grew up poor. My mom worked 3 jobs. Daniel listened quietly. I used to hate asking for help. Then I realized helping people is the best use of money. Daniel dried a plate. You helped more than my business. You gave us a chance, she met his gaze. You gave me something too, a reason to remember who I really am. One day, an old friend of Daniel's, Tom, from his mechanic apprenticeship, walked into the garage. He looked impressed. Heard you got an investor and a girlfriend. Daniel chuckled. She's someone special. Tom looked at the shiny new workbenches. Proud of you, man. Never thought you'd bounce back like this. Daniel just smiled. Later, Claire found him staring at the photo of his late win. She'd be proud, Claire said gently. I hope so. Claire took his hand. She'd want you to be happy. One night, Daniel and Claire sat outside the garage under the stars. Emma was inside drawing by flashlight. I've been offered a role in New York, Claire said softly. Big company, bigger reach. Daniel's chest tightened. You're leaving. Only if I have to, but I'd rather stay. He looked at her. Because this, she gestured at the garage at Emma's laughter at him. This feels more real than anything I've built. He reached for her hand. Then don't go. She nodded. I won't. Not if you ask me to stay. Stay. Claire turned down the offer. She and Daniel expanded the garage into a full-service shop. They hired a second mechanic-trained teens from the local school and started a program teaching basic car maintenance to single parents. Emma became the unofficial mascot, handing out cookies and coloring pages. One day, a news crew arrived. The headline, Investor and Single Dad Change Lives One Wrench at a Time. Months passed. Seasons changed. On a quiet Sunday morning, Daniel and Claire sat on a picnic blanket by the lake. Emma chased butterflies nearby. Claire turned to find Daniel holding something small in his palm, a silver ring, simple and steady. "You don't need to say anything yet," he said. "Just know that you changed my life, and I'd be honored to spend the rest of it changing yours." She blinked teary-eyed, then smiled. Yes, the garage still smelled like oil and metal, but now it also smelled like fresh coffee, chalk dust from a kid's corner, and cinnamon cookies Emma insisted on baking every Saturday morning. It had grown, not into something sleek or unrecognizable, but into something real. The old garage bay was still there, but half the space had been turned into a workshop meets community space. There was a bulletin board with job postings, shelves with donated tools, and a whiteboard that said in big, uneven letters, "Here we fix more than cars." Claire came every Wednesday to teach free finance classes. She never wore heels, always jeans, and sometimes when she forgot a streak of chalk on her cheek. People didn't see her as the woman from Forbes or the CEO on a screen. They saw her as Claire, the woman who knew how to listen, the woman who cared. Daniel was never comfortable being called the co-founder, though technically he was. He preferred mentor, mechanic, or just Emma's dad. He spent afternoons helping teenagers rebuild engines, or talking to single fathers who didn't know where to start. Sometimes he just handed out coffee and listened. That alone could change everything. And Emma, well, she ruled the place like a sunshine monarch in muddy sneakers. She had her own corner near the tool bench labeled Emma's Lemonade and Advice Booth, 50 cents for a cup, free if you needed a kind word. No one ever left empty-handed. They never talked much about the train station anymore. Not because it wasn't important, but because they didn't need to. That moment had written itself into the foundation of everything they built. One man helping a woman with her luggage. One choice, one kindness. It had unraveled the old and stitched something stronger in its place. People often ask Claire why she'd chosen this project, why she walked away from high-rise boardrooms and billion-dollar negotiations. She'd smile and say, "Because I was lost once and someone held the door open long enough for me to walk through." Daniel never asked her to stay. She just did. Some nights when the lights in the garage dimmed and Emma had long gone to sleep curled up in the office chair, Claire and Daniel would sit together on the front steps, sharing tea, sharing silence. And once on a quiet evening in early fall, Claire leaned against him and whispered, "Do you ever think about what might have happened if you hadn't helped me that day?" Daniel thought for a long moment. Then without looking away from the stars, he said, "No, because I can't imagine anything better than this. One moment, one act of kindness, and everything changed. Not all at once, not with fireworks, but in quiet, steady heartbeats, in shared cups of tea, in open doors, in second chances, and in the quiet miracle of two people who were once strangers finding home in each other."